Okay, at the end of the last video I stopped at this point and this was block 2 of the error codes, and we'd found some error codes. And then if I just quickly scroll back up, excuse me, there's block 1 of the error codes. Now of course what we want to be able to do is find the error paths, because it's the error paths that allow us to turn these codes off. Now to get us started, I'll go back to 2D view and we'll go back more or less to the beginning. There we are. Now I'll just run through it again. Now remember that these are not always in the same order in all files, so it's the shapes you are looking for, not the order that they are in at the moment. So there's a big block there, there's a big block of very low values here. Here we've got odd looking block, and in fact if you're used to looking at the EDC files, this block will be vaguely familiar, and I'll just come back to that in a moment. And then if we whiz forward a little bit, there's some heal and debouncing, and here for errors and healing debounce. Here we've got our first error block, so I'm going to go back here. This is most likely our error paths in one big block, and usually you can spot where they are. Very often they are just after this bit here anyway, so you've got a long sequence of low values of all about the same size, all in the region of 3 0 0 0, and then suddenly we go into lots of little wiggles like this, and then very often it goes back to peaks similar to this. Now sometimes this block sits at the end of one of these types of blocks. In other words, you might have lots of big spikes and then suddenly jump to these little ones rather than have this in between. Or you might see a pattern where you've got something like this, and this will suddenly be at the beginning like it is here, or tagged on the end. And the other place you sometimes find these is around here. So in other words, that block we were just looking at might be just before this one, or it might be tagged here before this block of errors starts. And again, occasionally it might be tagged on the end here, so it will be here just after the error paths, and after the error codes. And of course there's 2 error code blocks, so it could be just before or just after this one, or just before or just after the other one. It doesn't matter where it is, because what you're looking for is the shape, and the shape is, ignore all the green lines, you'll see what those are in a moment, they're my count lines, but it's all these little bumps here that we're looking for. And sometimes if you look in 8-bit mode, it's slightly more distinctive, because if you change to 8-bit mode you can see that some of the surrounding things are considerably different, and these still look similar to how they did in 16-bit mode. Not the same, but similar. I'll go back to 16-bit mode because I suggest that you do all your searching for this in 16-bit mode and then change to 8-bit mode when it's necessary. Right, okay, here we are then. We think we found our error path block. So I'll go to text view, and there it is. And if we look at it, it's too small. I mean, that's roughly half the size of the previous block. The previous block, when we were looking at error codes, just about fitted on the page. So this is roughly half the size, and I had to scroll down to get it all on there. If you don't believe me, look, what we'll do is we'll go and have a look. Look, let's go and find, there's the error block. Look, it won't fit on the page. I'll have to drag that down, and there you are. Look, start there and there. So the error block just fits on there. Now if I now go back to the error paths, there they are. If I move it to the top, pretty much exactly half the size, isn't it? Look, takes up half the screen. Now there is a good reason for that. This block is not a collection of 16-bit codes, it's a collection of 8-bit codes. So in other words, this block is actually twice this size. It's got twice as much data in it because each of these is 2. So whereas that looks like it's one value, it's not, it's 2 values. So this block actually contains exactly twice as much data. Now that's very, very important. Now first we need to find a start point. Now again, finding a start point is very, very difficult at times. So we just have to take our best guess, and of course our best guess is often based on this sort of thing, where there is an abrupt change. Now look at that there, and then sudden abrupt change. And if we go back, the abrupt change, you can see 03072, lots and lots of 03072s, and suddenly an abrupt change. So this block may well start there at 00257, or it might start at this odd one here, 02817. Now very often this is difficult to work out in this view. You very often need to go to 8-bit view to be more certain of what you're seeing at this stage. So what we'll do before we change though is we'll just go through this, because these numbers, as you can see, 00257, 00259, 00257 again, these are fairly common numbers that you see quite a lot in EDC error paths. So we could well be in the right region for our error paths, couldn't we? Look, lots of 00257. So you see those a lot. This one is a little bit odd because it doesn't fit in with that sort of pattern, but I am fairly sure that the start of the table is here and not there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this view to 8-bit, because once I change it to 8-bit, you can see that there's where I believe it starts. And the reason I believe it starts there is because if you look, the 001s and 11s are very, very common, whereas these here are the values before we get our sudden change. And so although in 16-bit view it looked like the sudden change was over here, I actually think the sudden change starts there. Now ignore the fact that the red line misses this one out. If you're familiar with using WinOwls at this level, you will know why that happens, and if you don't, it's not really worth telling you, because you'll find out one day when you start messing around trying to do this and discover that you can't get the box to fit the size you want it to be. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this over, so just ignore the red box for now. I'm just pressing Control and the arrow keys to move this over, because I want it to line up, because once again what I've done is I've made it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. I've made it 20 addresses wide, just like I did last time. And there's good reason for that, because if you remember to the last video, I needed 881. So here we go, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 20, 40, 60, 80. Hopefully that is the last one, 881. Now of course very difficult to tell at this point, because you can see that that 2 looks like the sort of number that could be similar to that 2, which would mean that this table would end at 882. But I'm going to work on the assumption that I'm correct so far, and that the tables all end at 881 values. So counting from the beginning, I'm going to assume that I'm correct, and that is the beginning, so I'm going to count from there just like I just did. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 400. Now if you remember back to the last video, the code I was looking for was at position 446, 447. So there we are, 20, 40. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and there we are, 6 and 7. So all I need to do at that point is say, right, well I would prefer that not to read 003, I would prefer that to read 111, as in 000. That's what I would prefer it to read. Soon as I try to move, are you sure you want to make that change? Yes, I'm sure I want to make that change, and don't ask me again, which is why I've ticked the first box. So that's now changed, and I've gone into the second box, and I'm going to make that 1, 2, 3 zeros. So all zeros. Right, I've now turned off that path. That path now doesn't work. So if that error code tries to show, the path just simply ignore it. And then I'm going to go and look for the other one. I've got 800, 20, 40, 60, 61, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 70, 71, and I was looking for 72 and 73, and there they are. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Job done. They will not show. So now I've got that bit there is now 0 and non-functional. This bit here is now 0 and non-functional. So the 4 positions of that particular error code will no longer show, and I will not get that error appear. But of course, don't forget, although the error won't appear, the error will still be there. Unless I actually fix the car, the error will still be there. So if that's an error that puts the car into limp mode, the car is still going to go into limp mode. The only thing I've done is stop the little light coming on the dashboard, and I've stopped somebody's diagnostic tester showing up that error, because that error is now gone, because the fault path will not show that error. But I haven't actually fixed anything. So you do need to take that into account when you're deleting these things. Right, hopefully you've now got from these 2 videos enough information so that you can delete some errors of your own. You will find that it's sometimes a little bit difficult, simply because finding the start points of the error paths and the errors on their error tables is difficult. This path one here can be particularly difficult to find the start of. Some people get round this by cheating. I've seen lots of so-called professional tuners cheat, because when they're in the area where they think they're correct, what they do is they set lots of these to 0. So they just take a guess and they say, well, it must be close to here, and they would set all of these to 0. This is really not a good idea. You should try to be very precise and only 0 the exact point, so that you don't interfere with any other error messages that the ECU might want to produce. Okay, I'll stop there and assume that that's enough for people to be getting on with.